This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Edwards. Tonight's top stories from East Asia. Several injuries reported and damage to buildings and other infrastructure following a 7.1 magnitude earthquake in Kumamoto Prefecture in Japan's southwest. Now, Asian equities taking a tumble again as a slump in chip stocks deepens amid signs that China is catching up in the technological arms race. Also, China marks the 5th anniversary of its Global Development Initiative with a warning that the UN's 2030 development goals are seriously delayed and the north-south divide is widening. Also, Brazil is deepening trade ties with the region, advancing Mercosur talks with South Korea while also moving forward on negotiations with China. Also tonight, a bold plan to save South Korea's dying rural towns. Every resident gets a monthly basic income. But the question is it working? A powerful magnitude 7.1 earthquake has struck Japan, knocking out power to thousands of households. The Met Agency says the tremor in southwestern Kumamoto Prefecture was a level 7. That's the highest on its seismic intensity scale. Now, a tsunami advisory has been lifted and authorities are assessing the extent of the damage. Well, for more, let's go to CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida joining us live from Tokyo. Michio, what has been the government's response to this earthquake so far?
Well, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi talked to reporters, and she said she is hearing reports of injuries, of fire breaking out, damage to roads and buildings. She didn't give specific figures, but she did call for the public in quake-hit areas to save lives first. Now, she said members of the Cabinet Office have been dispatched to Kumamoto Prefecture. She has ordered information to be shared to the public, work together with the local governments to give all it takes for rescue and relief efforts. Now, Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara assured that the Sendai nuclear power plant in Kagoshima, also in Kyushu Island, showed no signs of abnormality. Now, 2 minutes after the quake, Prime Minister Takaichi ordered to confirm the extent of damage, to coordinate with the local government, to prioritize human lives. Mr. Kihara, the Chief Cabinet Secretary, said at the Prime Minister's office, emergency team of senior officials were assembled immediately, and the team is working together with the police, firefighters, and the Coast Guard. Now, the Japan Meteorological Agency said regarding aftershocks, it's called for residents to be especially cautious for the next 3 days. The Meteorological Agency reminded residents of the 2016 Great Kumamoto earthquake. On April 14th, Kumamoto experienced a magnitude 6.5 earthquake. 2 days later, a magnitude 7.3. And on the seismic intensity scale, it was 7 on the scale of 7. Both days. And according to the government, 55 people died, over 1,800 were injured, 180,000 were evacuated, over 8,000 buildings collapsed, and 160,000 were damaged to a certain degree. And its iconic black castle, Kumamoto Castle, was severely damaged, and we're seeing reports that it was damaged again in this latest earthquake.
Michio, I know we don't have the exact stats and figures to share at the moment, but in terms of the impact of the quake and the damage so far, can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, local reports from Kumamoto say there's been serious damage to roads and bridges. We've been seeing footage of bridges collapse. There are reports of landslides and fire outbreaks everywhere. In Yatsushiro, known for its port town, roads are witnessed to be cracked, buildings collapsed. A cargo train is reported to have derailed and collapsed. And city officials have been evacuated. And there are reports of people trapped under debris. Thousands of homes are without power. And a fire station in the area is reported to be flooded with emergency calls. And as to public transportation, Kyushu bullet train and local trains are suspended. Kumamoto Airport is reported closed, but Kyushu's key Fukuoka Airport has reopened, and so have Miyazaki and Oita airports. But aftershocks continue, and Kyushu area is experiencing a heat wave. 92,000 people are on an emergency alert level of 5 in Kumamoto.
Well, thanks for the update on this developing story on Japan's earthquake. CNA's senior correspondent Michio Ishida in Tokyo. Now, China's top diplomat is warning of serious delays in the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, which aims to end poverty, protect the environment, and improve lives by 2030. Foreign Minister Wang Yi also noted a widening gap between developed and developing nations that posed a grave challenge. Now, he was speaking in Beijing at a meeting to mark the 5th anniversary of China's Global Development Initiative. Mr. Wang says that Beijing is ready to deepen cooperation with all parties to help the Global South tackle challenges. Now, the Global Development Initiative was proposed by Chinese President Xi Jinping at a United Nations address back in 2021. Well, that's when many developing countries were struggling to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and also falling behind on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Well, China says that the initiative will help countries achieve the targets by promoting cooperation in areas like poverty reduction, food security, healthcare. And unlike China's Belt and Road Initiative, the GDI is not one giant infrastructure program. Instead, it focuses on development cooperation, such as funding, technical assistance, and training programs. Well, there are 8 priority areas, including green development, industrialization, and the digital economy. Beijing says more than 200,000 people have been trained from across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Pacific. China is the principal funder through its own development programs and partnerships with UN agencies. Supporters say the GDI provides much-needed development assistance for poorer nations. But critics argue that it also strengthens China's political influence in the developing world and could increase the recipient country's dependence on Beijing. The GDI is part of a broader set of global initiatives proposed by China. Security, which argues against military blocs, civilization, calling for cultural exchange and non-interference, and governance, pushing for a bigger voice for developing nations. All these reflect Beijing's vision for a more influential role in shaping the international order. Well, quite a bit to unpack here, so we are now joined by Wang Huiyao, founder of Center for China and Globalization and also former counselor at China State Council, and he's speaking to us all the way from Paris. Well, thanks, Dr. Wang, once again for joining us. So I'm going to start with the big picture question first of all. So 5 years on, what is the single most significant achievement of the GDI?
Well, I think that 5 years of GDI is very significant. First of all, it was announced at 2021 UN General Assembly by President Xi. And of course, since then, many things has been happening. For example, there's over 70, 80 countries now are in the friends of the group that actually support this development initiative. And also, China has greatly accelerated its collaboration with UN to really support the UN 2030 agenda of development as well. And also, you can see many projects has been actually accomplished, and over 23 billion US dollars has been spent in terms of thousands of projects across the global South countries. So I think that is really very significant. But what's more, I think in the era of, as you just said, post-pandemic, but also in the era that development is less a focus, geopolitical is more of the routine of the day, wars and all those conflicts. GDI becomes so special and so valuable. And also, we are also facing the USAID was really abolished. And so that shows that we need the major countries like China to stand up to say, okay, let's really put the global development on our agenda, support the UN and support the development. And then that's very significant still today.
So, but Dr. Wang, I have to pick up on what Foreign Minister Wang Yi said, because he struck a rather sobering tone. I mean, he said that the UN Sustainable Development Goals are seriously delayed. In your view, at this point, what do you think the GDI's biggest priority should be in order to narrow that gap?
Absolutely. I think Foreign Minister Wang Yi was right. And we all know that SDG has been really delayed, not delayed for some part, but it's largely delayed. And accomplishment is only probably 20-30%. Then we only have 5 years to the end of this big initiative. So what I think China GDI is contributing is, first of all, to get all the attention, to get global development on the agenda of the UN, and then to support UN SDG 2030 agenda. That's number one. Number two is that China also, work with UN to really map out some of the project and making some good examples of those projects to really to showcase the SDG, possibility and feasibility. And thirdly, I think prioritize the poverty alleviation is really one of the most important things, because pandemic has pushed 100 million, 200 million back into poverty. We actually have to push them out of poverty, and so SDG is really playing that kind of role. And furthermore, I think that given that there's more tension, there's more war, there's more famine, there's more poverty, getting more debt. And I would think that the GDI can be really useful as a tool, as a mechanism, as a core for global attention and to strengthen the collaboration among all countries for global south. So China is the second largest economy and stand up and calling the global development. We haven't heard any other country calling that much. I think this is really important. We need to get all the countries, global north, global south, work together.
Yeah, if you could elaborate on that, because that's what Wang Yi is saying. I mean, he's asking for these developing countries to play a bigger role in shaping this post-2030 global development agenda. But then, Dr. Wang, what would that actually look like in practice? What would these developing countries be doing?
Well, there's quite a few things they can do. I think, first of all, they should really all pitch in and probably participate actively in this 2030 agenda of the UN. And then China actually support the Global South-South Cooperation under UN and provide financial support, provide a lot of a program there that can be applied to really sparkle the development in different Global South countries. And also, furthermore, I think that China also has this Belt and Road initiative that has related, not really replacing, but also related with GDI. So any development programs, not only from China but other countries, EU Global Initiative, B3W, and all those things should really work together. And also development banks. I mean, they have a huge role to play. So I'm very pleased to see that China at this kind of a juncture and critical moment, to really put forward a grand initiative, not only just to get attention, but really inject a new narrative, inject new attention, inject new focus, so that all the Global South countries can say, hey, here's a country that still values and cares and cherishes the development. Let's work together. And let's put the UN, because UN is having a new term, is changing its Secretary General. So development should be always at the priority of the UN agenda. And then you can summarize 70-some years of China development. China's become second largest economy. Development is always number one priority. And that can be replicated for all the Global South countries, attach great importance to the development, and for the world to really shift attention to the development. And that's really how we get all the people out of poverty, and that's very proven.
So the bottom line is, let's work together. Well, let's hope that happens. Thank you very much for unpacking China's CDI. Wang Yi there, founder of Center for China and Globalization, and also former counselor at China State Council, speaking to us from Paris. Right, on that note, we are going to go for a break now, but coming up next on East Asia Tonight, China begins mass producing a homegrown technology vital for advanced chip making, taking another step towards chip self-sufficiency. Plus, Taiwan detains an Nvidia employee as part of a probe into the smuggling of the US tech giant's AI chips to China. Hello again. You're watching East Asia Tonight, and we've got business news now with Roland Lim. So, Roland, tech stocks tumbled again today.
Yes, unfortunately, I'll tell you, yes. Investors are dumping chip makers ahead of results from a quartet of Silicon Valley's biggest tech giants this week. Tech took a battering on another black day for Asian stock markets, underscoring that doubts over spending, returns, and valuations are still deepening rather than fading. Compounding those concerns is a report of a breakthrough in China's chip industry. I'll have more on that a little bit later on, but first, a look at South Korea's Kospi index, collapsing nearly 11%, triggering a circuit breaker for the 8th time this year. It was dragged down by losses of more than 13% in heavyweights SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics. The two firms have fallen almost 50% since hitting all-time highs last month, while the Kospi index is down more than 30%. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 tanked more than 3% as Kioxia shedding 18%, while Advantest and Tokyo Electron dived more than 10%. The Nikkei 225 is down almost 15% since hitting a high of more than 72,000 points last month. Taipei was also off by more than 4% as market heavyweight and chip giant TSMC took a hit. Today's sell-off follows a bleak session on Wall Street with chip giants including SanDisk, AMD and Nvidia posting sharp declines. Analysts say concerns over AI overspending are making investors uneasy, and the reluctance to buy the dip suggests they're waiting for stronger evidence of return before buying back into the sector. All eyes will now be on earnings this week from Samsung and SK Hynix, which could offer fresh clues on the outlook for chip demand. Investors' jitters over longevity of the AI boom compounded by signs that China's drive to build its own semiconductor supply chain and to reduce its reliance on foreign technology may have reached another milestone. A state-backed company in Shanghai, which has not been named, has reportedly begun producing homegrown chip-making machines. The information reports the first units are expected to be delivered this year to leading Chinese chip makers, including SMIC, Hua Hong Semiconductor, and CXMT. The development comes as China accelerates efforts to build a more self-reliant semiconductor industry, despite years of US-led export controls. Last year, China pushed chip makers to use more domestic equipment, requiring firms seeking approval for new capacity to show that at least half of their tools will come from Chinese suppliers. The move has also helped fuel the growth of local equipment makers developing alternatives to foreign technology in a market long dominated by companies such as Dutch giant ASML. Now, ASML is the world's leading maker of lithography machines used in chip manufacturing. The report says that the development could eventually challenge ASML's position in China, but that the technology remains at an early stage. Still, shares of ASML fell by as much as 8% after the report. It also rattled fellow Dutch equipment maker, that's BE Semiconductor, and French chip supplier Swatec. China is pushing back against U.S. accusations that its AI companies improperly used American models to train their own systems. Its Commerce Ministry has accused Washington of, quote, AI hegemonism, and has warned that it would take all necessary measures if Washington moves to impose sanctions on Chinese AI companies. The dispute centers on Moonshot AI, the Chinese startup behind the Kimi K3 model. A White House official has accused the company of using model distillation to copy capabilities from Anthropic's latest AI model. Now, distillation is a technique where a smaller AI model learns from the outputs of a larger, more capable one. Moonshot has, of course, denied the allegations. Beijing adds the claim lacked factual and legal basis and accused the U.S. of using technology restrictions to contain Chinese innovation. The mainland markets are also feeling the heat from the tech sell-off. Shanghai Composite ending the day more than 1% in the red. Second boss, Shenzhen Component down by 4.5%, weighed down by tech counters, but Hang Seng Index bucking the trend. Investors in Hong Kong also eyeing another mega listing by Chinese optical parts maker Zhongqi Innolight on Thursday. China markets giving up some of the boost it gained from memory chipmaker CXMT's stellar market debut yesterday. Now, it became the mainland's most valuable listed company after its shares surged more than 400% in its Shanghai listing. The stocks muted on the second day of trade, though, ending the day 4% in the red. Taiwanese prosecutors have detained an Nvidia employee as part of an investigation to alleged smuggling of supermicro AI servers into China. The Keelung District Prosecutor's Office says a suspect named Zhang was questioned after authorities searched his home and workplace on July 24th. The case is believed to be the first known instance of legal action against an Nvidia employee in connection with the investigation. It follows earlier detentions in Taiwan involving employees of Supermicro Computer and a data center operator. Now, in May, Taiwanese officials accused 3 individuals of falsifying documents to export Nvidia's AI chips to China in violation of U.S. trade restrictions. 7 people are now being held as part of the investigation, including the Nvidia employee, 2 from Supermicro, and 1 from Taiwan-listed Albitron Technology. Now, they are accused of forging documents to ship about 50 Supermicro servers to China. The servers were reportedly equipped with Nvidia chips subject to U.S. export controls. Now, Taiwan has tightened export controls in recent years to prevent its advanced technology from reaching China. The AI boom providing a lift to East Asian carriers, with the region home to chip-making titans in Taiwan and South Korea. Well, cargo revenue for several carriers is at multi-year highs, and that's also helped to offset the impact of the Middle East driven by the surge in jet fuel costs, I should say. Korean Air earned more than $1 billion the previous quarter, while Taiwanese carriers saw more than 40% year-on-year growth. Shipments of AI hardware are taking up more space in cargo holds, sending air freight rates from East Asian cities to the U.S. to their highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, several airlines are looking to capitalize on the boom by expanding their freighter fleets. Now, for more insights on this story, we're joined by Vincent Wong. He is Air Freight Director at C.H. Robinson. Vincent, very good to have you on the show. Now, global air cargo demand, that rose 7% on year in June. Capacity only grew 3%. And we have trans-Pacific load factors at near 90%. That's near the practical limit, if I'm not mistaken. So how tight is it right now out there?
You're absolutely right, Roland. Demand definitely is growing. We are looking at between 4% in May and then 7% in June, right? And capacity is actually growing only at about 3 to 4%, right? I think for second half of the year, we anticipate to on average about 4%. So you have a situation where demand exceed supply. So it will continue. I mean, I think this trend will continue. Maybe you will pause a bit because of the summer holidays in Europe and in US, but we do anticipate Q3 to be strong again.
And I understand that AI hardware reportedly crowding out the other goods out at Asia's cargo bays. So are ordinary exporters now having to pay more or simply being pushed out of the most important routes, do you think?
Semicon is nothing new, right? Semicon industry have been supporting the air freight industry for the longest time. But through the last 2 years, the growth of semicon, have more than doubled. So these 2 years, the air freight industry have been largely driven by semicon shipments, specifically out of Asia Pacific, out of Taiwan, one of the biggest. We have Taiwan, we have Malaysia, we have Singapore, we have Vietnam, and of course China, right? So it's a very balanced demand across Asia. Unlike in the past where previously it was basically e-commerce, where e-commerce is very focused on our China. So I think it's a good sign for the industry, where we are seeing across Asia, especially in Robinson, we are seeing our volume out of Southeast Asia increasing by almost double this past 2 years.
What about the impact of jet fuel costs? I mean, IATA predicts that jet fuel costs set to hit around $350 billion industry-wide this year. Now, we've seen airlines like Cathay Pacific post strong profits because of cargo. Is the semiconductor freight effectively subsidizing the passenger side of the business right now?
Another very good observation and question. Yes, fuel definitely have grown, right? Pre-war, we are looking at about 44 cents, and it escalated all the way to about $2. I think tires was $2.41 out from Hong Kong. But within 2 months, that had pretty much dropped to about $1 plus, right? Right now, because of the activities in Middle East, price have come up slightly again. But I think the airlines are very familiar how to manage this, increase and decrease, and they do pack it against specific indicator in the industry, whether it's Singjet, whether it's a brand and stuff like that. So I think fuel, yes, definitely have went up a fair bit, but the cost of freight, right? So there's two components. One, the cost of freight have also risen, more so than pre-war. So overall, the combination of the freight charges and the fuel surcharges that's been imposed on international freight, that have overall increased quite a fair bit over the past few months.
Vincent, appreciate those insights. We have run out of time, unfortunately. That was Vincent Wong, Air Freight Director at C.H. Robinson. And that's all for business. It's back to you, Sally.
Thanks so very much, Roland. Well, we are going to go for another break now, but coming up next on East Asia tonight, why Brazil is dropping its long-standing opposition to a Mercosur trade deal with China. Plus, we head to a rural town in South Korea to find out why the government is paying people to stay. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. A magnitude 7.1 earthquake hits Japan's southwest Kumamoto Prefecture. There have been several injuries, and many people are reportedly trapped in a damaged shopping mall. Asian equities tumbling again as a slump in chip stocks deepens, amid signs that China is catching up in the technological arms race. Also, China marks the 5th anniversary of its Global Development Initiative with a warning that the UN's 2030 development goals are seriously delayed and the North-South divide is widening. Brazil and South Korea have agreed to advance talks for a trade pact between Seoul and the South American bloc Mercosur. This comes as President Lee Jae-myung is in Brazil for his South American tour, which includes Chile and Argentina. Well, Mr. Yi said that the potential deal with Mercosur cannot be delayed any further. Brazil's president said that they have agreed to form a working group to speed up discussions. Formal negotiations started in 2018, but they have stalled. Now, another Asian giant also eyeing a deal with Mercosur. Brazil and China have agreed to advance talks after the leaders held a phone call to discuss aligning national development projects and expanding cooperation in high-tech sectors. This is a stark contrast to Brasilia's long-standing position to not form a Mercosur trade deal with Beijing, seen as a threat to South American industries. Now, these discussions come just days after U.S. President Donald Trump imposed new tariffs on 60 trading partners, pushing countries to diversify trade ties. Mercosur is one of the world's largest trading blocs and is rich in critical mineral resources. In recent years, the bloc has struck deals with other partners, including the EU. Now, Japan is reportedly preparing to slash the sales tax on food and drinks from 8% to 1% for 2 years. The measure is expected to take effect in April, fulfilling one of Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's key election promises. Now, according to local media, Ms. Takaichi could instruct the ruling party this week to begin drafting the legislation. But the government has yet to explain how it will finance the tax cut, which is expected to cost more than 4 trillion yen, or about $24 billion each year. That uncertainty could deepen concerns over Japan's public finances and push government borrowing costs even higher. Well, the government opted for a 1% rate instead of removing the tax entirely, so retailers won't have to reprogram cash registers. Meanwhile, the government also announced cash payments to eligible households totaling nearly $3.7 billion to help offset the remaining 1% tax. The cash payments could begin in autumn next year. Now, Taiwan will test its abilities to relocate weapons production and convert civilian factories for military use during annual military drills next month. The exercise is set to take place during the Han Kuang War Games, which starts next Wednesday. It will test whether Taiwan can disperse weapons production while maintaining supplies needed to support operations during a conflict. The Navy and Coast Guard will rehearse keeping sea lanes open and escorting shipments of critical supplies. The island will also slow mobile internet speeds to assess communications under limited bandwidth. China has been holding routine drills near the island, which Beijing sees as its territory, raising concerns of a full-scale invasion. Now, 2 earthquakes of at least 5.7 magnitude struck China's northwestern province of Qinghai within minutes of each other. Authorities have not yet received any reports of casualties, but state media Xinhua, citing preliminary checks, reports damaged buildings and roads in at least 7 villages. The tremors also triggered limited landslides on nearby mountainsides. Now, emergency response teams have been dispatched to the epicenter, located in a sparsely populated, high-altitude region. Power and transport links are gradually being restored in China after Tropical Storm Noel swept through the region over the weekend, bringing heavy rains and flooding to parts of the country's south. Expressways in Guangdong province have reopened, and rail services to Beijing, Hong Kong, and Jiangxi are returning to normal. Blocked roads are also being cleared, restoring access to isolated communities. Ports at the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge have also resumed partial operations. Now, China has issued its highest alert for flash floods across multiple provinces through today, with the local governments urged to strengthen prevention and monitor areas considered vulnerable to flooding and landslides. Well, around 900,000 people in Guangdong province were evacuated ahead of Noel's arrival on Sunday. It continues to weaken, but remains the strongest typhoon to hit China this year. Emergency measures are still in place across most cities across China. Beijing says that it has allocated about $26.5 million of disaster relief funds to support the provinces hit by the floods and typhoon. Chinese President Xi Jinping says that he hopes Slovakia will play a constructive role in strengthening ties between China and the European Union. Mr. Xi made the remarks during talks in Beijing with Slovak President Peter Pellegrini. And state media Xinhua says that the Chinese leader urged both China and the EU to manage differences through what he calls equal consultation while seeking common ground. Mr. Xi also called for deeper cooperation between China and Slovakia in emerging sectors, including clean energy, the digital economy, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Slovakia has become an important destination for Chinese investment in Central Europe, particularly in the automotive and electronics industries. Now, some rural parts of South Korea are actually paying residents just for living there as they try to reverse population decline. CNA's senior correspondent Lim Yeon-suk travels to Okcheon County to find out if it is actually working.
For these elderly villagers, even a trip to a nearest supermarket can be difficult.
차가 없어, 차가. 기동력이 없어서 안 돼요.
They're waiting for something that has become a lifeline for villages like this, a supermarket on wheels. Launched in June, it visits villages every 2 weeks, bringing groceries directly to residents.
콩나물도 사고 두부도 사고 아이스크림 사서 먹고 뭐 빌거 다 있으면 사지 편하지요. 우리가 거기 나가서 사는요 훨씬 낫지.
Scenes like these have become more common in Okcheon, a rural county of about 50,000 people in central South Korea, roughly 2 hours south of Seoul. Nearly half its residents are aged 60 or older. Like many rural communities across South Korea, Okcheon's population has been shrinking for decades as younger residents moved to bigger cities. Now, by giving every resident a monthly basic income to spend at local shops, the county hopes to boost its economy and make itself a more attractive place to live. Under the 2-year pilot, every eligible resident receives vouchers worth 150,000 Korean won, or about $100 each month. New arrivals don't qualify immediately. They must register as residents and live in the county for at least 3 months. And usage of the vouchers is limited to mostly shops near their homes, keeping the funds within the local economy. Officials say the county has gained more than 2,000 residents since it was selected for the pilot in December last year. 33-year-old Yang Hee-soo moved here this year from Mokpo in the southwest to be closer to his parents.
도움이 많이 됐죠. 머리 하실 때가 마땅치 않으셨었나 봐요. 자신이 생활하는 면 소재지에서 사용을 해야 되기 때문에 때마침 제가 미용실을 오픈을 해서 그분들이 와서 사용을 많이 해주시죠.
At Okcheon's local produce market, peach farmer Kwak Jung-sop says sales have risen sharply.
기본소득에서 소비가 많이 늘어났어요. 20-30% 정도 올라간 것 같아요. 일단 인구 유입도 그렇지만 저희가 저도 지금 쓰고 있거든요. 저희도 외식도 하고 또 농자재도 사고 농약도 사고 그런데 많이 쓰고 있어요.
But some vendors say usage of the vouchers needs to be broadened.
여기 카드를 갖다가 옥천에다도 좀 썼으면 좋겠어. 그러니까 여기 와서 쓰면 우리 좀 살고 더 좋고 노인들도 좋고.
The government is considering whether to expand the 2-year pilot to other regions. 69 county-level areas across South Korea are officially classified as being at risk of extinction.
제가 처음 취임했을 때는 48,200까지 내려갔었어요. 내려갔는데 이 시범 사업을 하고 난 다음에 5만 인구가 4년 만에 회복이 되었죠. 어르신들 얘기가 저희들이 기본소득 대회가 27일입니다. 매월 27일인데 27, 28, 29 되면은 오토바이 소리가 아주 시내가 요란하다고 할 정도로 이 사업의 효과는 지역 경제에 많은 도움을 주고 있습니다.
For many residents here, the benefits are already being felt. Whether they'll be enough to change Okcheon's future, only time will tell. Im Yeon-sik, CNA, Okcheon County, South Korea.
But time now for another break, but coming up on East Asia tonight, Chinese milk tea brand Molly to pay more than $1 million to Louis Vuitton for infringing its trademark. The court ruling leaving a sour taste among some in China. A beverage chain Molly Tea is trending on Chinese social media after it lost a trademark infringement case to French luxury brand Louis Vuitton. Now, a court in Suzhou ruled that Molly Tea's 4-petal logo was just too similar to one of LV's registered designs. The tea company was ordered to apologize and also pay about $1.5 million in damages. But the ruling has touched a nerve and triggered debate in China. So for more on this, CNA senior correspondent Han Kuang, he joins us live from Shanghai. So Kuang, for those of us who are not sure why this case has become so controversial, please enlighten us.
Well, the controversy came about because many people here see this as more than just a dispute between two brands. Now, let's take a look at the two motifs. The one on the left is Louis Vuitton's. Molly Tea's logo is in the middle. And the one on the right is a similar floral form found in a historic Suzhou garden. When you look at this graphic, it's not hard to notice some similarities between the designs, but they are not identical. For example, the center of Molly T's flower sits a diamond-shaped hole, while LV's flower has a circular floral center. But the crux of the issue here, critics argue, is that LV's flower resembles a floral motif found in ancient China, as you can see there with the example from a historic Suzhou garden. So the backlash is over whether a foreign luxury brand is being allowed to use trademark law to claim excessive broad control over a shared cultural form. And that tension came through clearly when my team spoke to people here in Shanghai. Let's take a listen.
它也不是完完全全的把 LV 的那个东西照搬过去了，并且它也没有把 LV 的字样印过去，只能说它这个花纹是和 LV 很像，那也可以说这个花纹和以前古代的那种花纹很像。
我是觉得这个共创是多元的，然后如果是从一些我们中国自己传统文化一些这种图案上去，在这个基础上去发挥一些创作，我觉得这个都是很好的呀。
我觉得对茉莉奶白应该是件好事情吧，对它的知名度通过一个大牌去放大，然后靠着一个他想联名 LV 可能都不一定能够做到，黑红也是红。
Okay, so the guy has said it. Negative publicity is still publicity. So that last soundbite there is quite interesting. But is it the case for Molly T that they're going to get more recognition now?
In some ways it is, because according to a Taipei report, Molly T's official Weibo account gained around 250,000 followers in the month after the case became public. So LV may have won the court case, but Molly T has gained sympathy and a great deal of free publicity. Molly T gained even more goodwill after it donated about $150,000 to flood-hit Hangzhou in Guangxi at about the same time this case came out. So Hangzhou is a major jasmine flower growing region closely tied to Molly T's signature ingredient, jasmine infused tea, and even its Chinese name, Molly Nai Bai. So of course, when we bring in Molly T's main ingredient, it also raises a design question. Why did Molly T not design a logo more closely resembling a jasmine flower, a flower with 5 to 9 petals? Why did it choose a 4-petal motif? Was it really trying to copy LV? Well, I'll tell you, that is literally the million-dollar question.
What about that Suzhou court? You know, I mean, was that some of the things that they considered as well? And I'm curious to know, what did the ruling actually say?
From what we know, the court's reasoning appears to be narrower than the wider cultural debate online. It reportedly focused on the shape of the petals, their symmetry, and the overall visual impression. And the court also considered how consumers interpret branding in China today. Collaborations between luxury labels and beverage chains have become quite commonplace. Louis Vuitton itself has worked with a Chinese coffee chain. So the court ruled that Molly T's logo could well lead consumers to believe the two companies had entered into a licensed collaboration. The court also reportedly considered what Molly T did after LV sent legal letters in 2024. According to excerpts of the ruling, Molly T later expanded the use of similar elements across cups and merchandise. Still, Molly T's founder says the company intends to appeal.
So, Yuguan, if we can just rewind this, a whole way back, and we talk about the history, right? And what does the evidence actually tell us about where this particular motif came from?
Well, on its Weibo, Louis Vuitton brought up its old registration document in France to stake its claim. It shows that LV's monogram is not simply just one flower. It's a repeating system of initials, floral forms, and geometric elements. LV also says that this 1896 monogram drew from Art Nouveau, Japonism, and Gothic art. And some netizens have compared the LV monogram with floral and geometric decorations found on Tang-era pipa preserved in Japan. And that really is where the controversy comes from. The versions of this graphic has been floating around on Chinese social media. It does not prove that LV copied this particular object, but it illustrates why some people reject the idea that the 4-petal motif began with LV. After all, by the 1890s, Europe already had a long tradition of chinoiserie art, and that draws inspiration loosely from ceramics, textiles, and other products from China. And by the Art Nouveau period, Chinese and Japanese influences were somewhat blended together. What's more, we also know that, Tang Dynasty, China had a huge influence on Japan's cultural development. And what's more, Islamic art is also a major source of geometric ornamentation because, religious objections against idolatry. Therefore, Islamic art favored abstract patterns. So it's hard to draw a line where geometric ornamentation comes from. After all, international trade and cultural exchange, I'll tell you, isn't a modern invention. It's just accelerated during our time.
Well, thanks very much for giving us a history of all the motifs. CNA senior correspondent Han Kuang speaking to us from Shanghai. Now, when you're looking for nutritional advice, dietitians usually come to mind. But today, more people are turning to AI-powered platforms to figure out what to eat, with the AI dietitian market projected to exceed $10 billion by 2033. Now, earlier, CNA's Rani Samtani and Clara Lee discussed the growing adoption of these tools and explored a key limitation, whether AI can truly tailor nutritional advice to each individual's needs.
And when it comes to personalization, I was just wondering, isn't it possible for us to say, upload our preferences or upload, our nutritional parameters, and then for the AI to help configure it for us?
Of course you can. So when we talk about context in this case, we're not just talking about preferences, we're also talking about things like your blood work, medical history of medical illnesses in your family. And yes, I can upload all this information to the platform, but can I trust the AI to ask the right follow-up questions, which registered medical professionals would do? That's not a guarantee. And even if I did trust the AI to do so, the issue of data privacy comes in, whether the company is going to use that information for any certain reasons. So one of the data privacy analysts I spoke to told me that it's actually not that simple when you're sharing this kind of information. Let's take a listen.
What starts off as just recommending to you what you might have for dinner could become suddenly you're getting advertisements about health supplements that maybe you didn't intend. So what I think users really need to drill down to is why are they sharing the information, and in particular, why does the company want it? And I'm sure many of these companies would love for you to be healthy. That's not how they make their money. They make their money out of subscriptions and out of advertising.
So, Clara, have you used these AI tools to help plan your nutrition, or are you planning to?
I'll admit I've used ChatGPT to generate a meal plan for myself. Not that I followed through with it, but I can show you a snippet of what it looks like. What I asked for was a day-by-day breakdown of what I should be eating Monday through Sunday for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if I wanted to lose fat and build muscle. And what they gave me was, the gist of it was correct. It's a good starting point to choose whole foods, avoid processed options. So this brings me to the point of nutritional literacy. With AI, it's so easy to be nutritionally literate right now. And on paper, that's a great thing. But if, let's say, there are no robust regulations and standards put in place to safeguard that AI, we might be spreading misinformation, which could be dangerous.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up Tuesday's edition of East Asia Tonight. Hope you've enjoyed this bulletin. See you again tomorrow.